Welcome back to I Love This Game, a podcast dedicated to the NBA. Kenny, how you doing?
I'm good, Zev. It's good to be back here. It's been a little bit of a hiatus. I know life kind of gets in the way sometimes, but nevertheless, here we are.
Oh yeah, glad to be back. So Celtics had a big win tonight. They took down the unbeaten so far Cavaliers, who are now 15-1. And Celtics look great. I mean, they're literally unbeatable if they hit their threes like that. They haven't even had Porzingis yet back, and they just look really good. Did you watch the game?
I didn't watch tonight. I'm actually, unfortunately, a Villanova guy, so was tuned into that Tilt versus Penn.
There you go.
Watching some real high-quality basketball.
Yeah, Celtics were unbelievable. So one thing I want to talk about here, I think for a long time, everybody's talked about heat culture, and that's been just ubiquitous as a thing throughout the NBA. I think it's time people start talking about Celtics culture. So part of it is just how they play. Every single player on their team gives 100% effort on the defensive end at all time, right? They usually know exactly where to be. And even if there's a mistake and they don't or whatever, they're all hustling so much when it comes to just getting back on defense, or even like if they miss an assignment, covering on defense and everybody rotating and whatever. The effort on the defensive end, even when the subs are in, and the subs tend to play pretty decent minutes on the Celtics as a unit, they're still just good defensively compared to the average NBA team, and it's just based on effort. I think that's a big culture thing. And then if you look at the three-pointer, not only do they shoot probably the most threes in the league, but every single player on that team, you can tell, is just told shoot the three without any abandon. And no matter what, trusting your three-point shot. And they all must put in a ton of work. I'm sure they all have to shoot 500, 1,000 threes a day, whatever. I bet none of those guys are allowed to leave the gym every day until they shot X amount of threes, because you can't even be on that team if you can't hit a three.
But yeah, they've made it their identity, right? Where, like you said, everybody's kind of interchangeable offensively like that, and to some extent defensively too. I mean, they rotate with the best of them in the league, and they built that depth. Everybody knows their role. It's no surprise to me to see him do this going into the year. I mean, everybody knew they were going to be there, and I think they're just continuing it, which kind of speaks to the excellence that they've been, the level they've been at.
Yeah, Celtics culture. Honestly, I think that it's just a culture thing, and every player on that team has that same team first attitude, that same plays the right way kind of culture. And I think they probably do that the best of anybody in the league right now.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, roster construction too. I mean, it goes back a ways with them, right? Like, even goes back to Brad Stevens kind of stepping down, essentially going into the GM role, saying,
right.
"Hey, I'm not the guy to be the coach to take this to the level that it needs to be at." And they had a couple other mini phases between then and now, but they've kind of stayed the course on what looked to be like their plan with that roster, in terms of like they kind of knew how they wanted to build it. They committed to their guys. They really haven't wavered at all. So, yeah, I mean, they're kind of boring in some ways, but it's amazing to watch too. They're just so consistent.
Yeah, no, consistent's the best word for it. When Brad Stevens stepped down as head coach, I was definitely highly critical on it. I didn't think it was a good move, because I thought, why give up when you have one of the best coaches in the NBA? Why just give up on that and let him go to the GM role? Well, one, they had Ime Udoka, who is obviously a really, really good coach, right? But I think the other part of it is that look at how good Brad Stevens has done since he's been in the front office. Like that was the right move for him to go to the GM role, because like you said, they have the best roster construction in the league as of right now. I mean, OKC maybe in the long run, but as of right now, they definitely have the best roster in the league.
Yeah. No, you're right, dude. I mean, when you think back to Udoka, right? Like, it's almost comical now to think about it, where it's like they survived that whole scandal and that whole fallout, where like I'm sure they were committed to him being the guy for forever, right? Or, I mean, that's what it seemed like at the time, right? And to kind of have everything just kind of flipped on its head, and then be able to continue the way that it did with Missoula there, which, I think everybody was probably like, what, who's Joe Mazzulla, right? He played basketball at West Virginia like not even that long ago, and he's a head coach of this. To me at least, that was kind of a wild pick, but they, credit to them. They know what they're looking for and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's almost lucky that, I mean, that Epe Udoka thing, first of all, just a ridiculous situation. But even past all that, it's so lucky that they have this guy, Joe Mazzulla, just waiting in the wings. And he's this basketball psychopath who's like ultra culture driven, ultra, I don't give a fuck. Don't try to talk to me, media, because I'm super smart, but I'm also way smarter than you and the most arrogant jerk you've ever met. I don't mind doing that and hating you because I've always hated you as a player. Like, he has that whole thing, and it fits that team perfectly. And I think they got kind of lucky that he was just happened to be there. Like, how many teams in the league had a assistant coach that was young, players coach, used to be a player that was just there?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, right? I think time will tell on that, right? I can't tell if it was just lucky or if it's like, hey, their culture and their total system was just that good where they were like, hey, fuck it, we'll just plug this guy in and we know it'll work. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
They got a lot working for them, top to bottom
Yeah.
right now. So
Yep.
yep.
So what about Steph's big night the other night? Did you catch that Mavericks game against the Warriors?
Yeah. Spoiled Clay's return, and man, I think
Clay was great, dude. Clay was great in that game.
Yeah. I mean, I watched the beginning where they did like the whole montage for him and everything. It's cool. I was always a big Clay guy, despite not being, a Golden State fan at all during that dynasty stretch. Always liked Clay. So, he's definitely not the player that he was, but it was cool to kind of come back and just see him get his due there.
Yeah, for sure. Did you hear just to cut in, did you hear about what Steph proposed them doing at the All-Star game this year?
No, what was that?
So did you see the Steph versus Sabrina Ionescu thing last year?
Oh yeah.
First of all, I thought that was awesome because Sabrina came out and as a woman literally matched the best score from any guy that had been in the regular 3-point contest that had already finished. Right. I think it was like 26 was the high score. That's what she got. Steph came out and just got 29 and said, listen, everybody, shut the fuck up. No. Like, yeah, that was ridiculous. Right.
He wants to run it versus Clay this year.
Yeah. So it's apparently going to be like a potential team thing. It's going to be, so the 4 people would be Steph, Clay, Sabrina Ionescu, and of course, Caitlin Clark. And it would be some sort of team or some sort of 4 versus 4. Who knows? I don't know exactly how they're going to do it, but I think that
would draw some eyeballs. Yeah.
I mean, listen, who knows how long this whole WNBA hype thing is going to continue for, because obviously there's a big hype train that's media driven by ESPN and like whoever else, NBA, they gave WNBA a WNBA countdown episode this year, which I thought was wild, right? I certainly didn't expect it, but Caitlin Clark is awesome. And so I guess, she deserves the hype. Maybe the WNBA thing stays big, but either way, it's big right now, and capitalizing on it in the All-Star game was something that's fun when the All-Star weekend has been so bad for so long, almost like a must.
No, for sure, man. I mean, not
They're
to get
also
into the whole WNBA thing,
ahead.
but like I do think that Clark is, she's the real deal. She's gonna be around. I think it's almost inevitable that, her presence is gonna keep that interest elevated, and who knows what else might take off during the next, 8 to 10 years while she's, still the big draw that she is. I wouldn't be surprised to keep, seeing that game keep growing.
Yeah. So the other thing they're supposed to do at the All-Star game this year, just while we're talking about it, is apparently they're thinking about doing a 2v2 tournament, like a 4-team tournament, right? And it'll be 3 teams that are like the regular All-Stars, right? So the regular 2 All-Star teams would be broken up into 3 teams. And then there'd be like what's like the up-and-comer team. I forget what the name they gave it, but just basically like young, promising players, right? And
Oh
if you
yeah,
think about
I can't remember the name of that. I know what you're talking about though. Like, they do like the rookies versus the.
They had a different name for it this time because I think they'd probably include like rookies and sophomores and any other like guys who are like this guy's looking like he's going to be a great player, but he's not an all-star level guy yet.
Yeah.
Right. So, and there are probably a lot of those guys if you go throughout the league, especially because of how many guys that aren't all-stars. So if you think about it, it could add a lot of competition just because if for no other reason, that young up-and-coming team has all the more reason to try hard and play hard and win. If you're the veteran team and you have a team full of all-stars in the NBA, you don't want to lose to that team in front of everybody, right? So that game can be competitive. And then also there's like, if you're playing 2 games and it's 2v2, even if they're shorter games or something, I don't see LeBron playing hard in game 1. He might not even play game 1. Because
No.
Anthony Davis, what other players don't like? I mean, it's just an interesting idea. I don't know, but it's definitely a cool thing.
So since you brought this up, I had come across this idea on Twitter maybe a week ago, and it just kind of prompted me to think about it. Somebody was talking about an idea that was essentially all defensive team versus all stars. And obviously there's some overlap there, right? Because some guys
fuck that. That sounds great. That sounds
because
awesome.
you know that all defensive team is just gonna fucking grind you, right? Like, and it's gonna force the other guys to play because they don't want to be fucking embarrassed, right?
It's also going to be
make
funny
a name for themselves, and
right, yeah. It's also going to be funny when the starting backcourt is Drew Holiday and Derek White on the all defensive team. It's going to be glaring for the Celtics.
But I mean, Wemby back there. I mean, he'll probably be an all-star too. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's going to be some overlap where you got some all defensive guys that are also all-stars. But if you can figure out how to make those teams kind of balanced, it could be a pretty good game, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think that you'd have to give precedence to the all defense. So like Wemby, even though he's going to be an all-star anyway this year, or I think he should at least, right? As an all-star, he should still be on the all defense team, right? If like you're a first team all defense, you're forced onto the all defense team.
Yeah, I agree. That's the way to do it. That's the way
for
to
sure.
do it.
The all defense gets all the props and the love because it doesn't get it in the first place. And also I think it just makes the competition that much better.
Oh, 100%, man. No, but the league's fucking called. It's whistled for offense. Give the defense the fucking players, right? Like that's what we need.
Yep, for sure. So let's go back to Steph's big night, right? One thing that I kind of got pissed off about was the next day, right? I probably saw 3 to 4 headlines that said Steph with a huge fourth quarter. Da da da. Steph actually didn't have a huge fourth quarter. He had a ridiculous ending to the game. In the fourth quarter, I think he checked in with maybe 9 minutes left or 8 and change or something. Missed 3 shots in a row, I think, and really was just kind of cold until like 3 minutes, 10 seconds left. And then he hit his last 4 shots and hit 2 foul shots. 2 of the last 4 were threes. So he hit the last 12 points for the team and basically finished the game single-handedly. So I look at that more as just like a heroic ending, right? That's just coming in and being the most dangerous weapon in the NBA, right? Like he can come in running cold in the fourth quarter after missing 3 in a row. And so, wait, game's on the line? Hold on. Hold my beer. You know what I mean? Like ultimate hold my beer kind of moment.
Well, like you were especially like if it's a tie game or like a one possession game, I'm not so sure I'm going with him. But if I'm down like 6-7 points in the last couple of minutes, I'm absolutely picking Steph.
Of course.
Kind of to your point, right? Because I mean, he can just explode like that where, other guys can now too, but maybe not quite like we've seen with him before,
I will say that I think at this point, it's also like if your team's down by 1 or 2 at the end of the game, you have to go by him by a mile and a half at this point. If for no other reason than the night thing has become more and more real as it's been a thing. The more it's a thing, the more real it becomes for him too. So so I'm watching that game.
Oh my God.
At the end, I think they were down by, I think the Warriors were down by like 1 or 2, and the Mavericks had the ball there, ahead by 1 or 2, and they miss a shot, and they let Steph get the ball at the end. And I remember, like, as they're missing the shot, thinking, you can't miss this shot. You can't let Steph get the ball right now. You can't give this guy a chance to say night. And as he's bringing the ball up the court, I'm watching alone, just saying, like, you can't give this guy a chance to say night as I'm walking alone. Like, you can't give him, and I'm just saying it, like, louder and louder, knowing it's going to happen. Of course, he hits that ridiculous 3 to end the fucking game just to clinch it. And it's like, night. Oh, you fucking let him say night. It was ridiculous, bro. It was unbelievable.
So See, like some of my haters gonna come out now because, like, let me just put you on the spot right now. Name me one time where Steph Curry hit a fucking night shot in the postseason? When's he hit that shot in the playoffs in the last 10 seconds of a game? I don't think I've ever seen it.
Finals versus France this summer. Olympics. Team
Man.
NBA, baby.
Touche.
Or no,
Man.
Team USA. I mean, Team USA all day.
But even that, like, that was more along the lines of what we saw the other night, where it was just kind of like an onslaught of shots at the end. It wasn't like, hey, you got one shot, let's see it, right? Like, I haven't seen that from him. If anything, it's kind of a growing tale about how many in a row he's continued to miss to win games in the playoffs, and particularly like the finals.
Okay,
that's just a hater in me, man. But
guess what, hater in you? You may be like right on paper. Historically, you may be right. But the Steph Curry that's walking the earth today, if he finds himself in a playoff game and they're down by 2 at the end of the game, they're going to win that fucking game on a Steph 3. Let me tell you what, because he is that guy right now. He has become that guy.
I hope we see it, because either way, it's going to be fucking great to watch. I agree with you.
He has become the guy with, like, like it was. I always thought that it was, the world's on the line. You got the Monstars coming in. They're going to take over the world. If you don't hit the last second shot, you give the ball to MJ, of course, right? World's on the line. One guy has to hit a shot. It's Michael Jordan. Shit, at 55 years old, it might still be Michael Jordan, right? That's what people would say. But now, in terms of current day times, that is Steph Curry. And it's just something about his confidence and just something about all the threes and all the shooting and all the stupid shooting drills he's done year after year, and how all of it adds up. And eventually you get that many more reps than everybody else, and you just have this inner belief. And that was what I thought showed itself during that Olympics, that last three he hit. He's getting double covered. He shoots that three over everyone.
He's playing with house money now, right? Like, because he's
right.
He's playing free, right? You watch him play and you're like, dude, this guy essentially is. What else does he have to prove? Nothing, right? Like, you could argue, like, you'd like to see him like do it by himself on a lesser team, but I think some people would point to 22 and say, hey, that was close enough for me, right? So,
first of all, yes. Second of all, he's done it by himself when other guys on his team have been injured, including Clay. Even if that wasn't in the playoffs, he's done regular season stints where he carried them in like a Jokic-esque way. That was just ridiculous.
He's got nothing else to prove, which I kind of got sidetracked there. But yeah, man, he can see
that's
it.
Exactly
I think he really enjoyed playing with like KD and Bron in that Olympics, because they're all kind of at that stage of their career where it's like, hey, you're just relishing the moment. You can tell they just enjoy it, right? They're just playing for the pure love of the game, right? So
that was that. That's why I think they're all going to play together as they own the team together in Vegas. Love of the game, baby.
That would be fucking wild, man.
That wouldn't even be that. That's not love of the game. That's love of money, for sure, if they did that. But it also would be cool for the game.
There's some game though too. Yeah.
There's sure. They'd have the justification if they wanted it, for sure. So since we got into that Steph conversation, something else I really want to talk about, is it time to just simply acknowledge that Steve Kerr is the best coach in the NBA? Right. So if you look at it,
you're not going to get that from me, but go on.
Okay, so let me give you my look at it, or let me give you my perspective on the situation then. So I do think that the best way to judge a coach is you look at the roster and you look at what the coach is able to do with the roster, right? It's on the GM to put the roster together. It's on the coach to make that roster win, or at least to maximize potential, we would say, right? So Mazzulla, really good coach, but I don't even think it's possible for him to prove he's the best coach in the NBA right now, because the roster is so good. Right. But if you look at what the coach is doing, if you look at what the coach is doing with their team, Steve Kerr is doing the best job of any coach right now by far and away. Right. They play unbelievable defense. They also play super hard defense. He has guys shooting with a lot of confidence and playing with a lot of confidence in how they play on offense that I just would never have expected. Honestly, and some of those dudes I've watched play 2 or 3 games now, and I still have no idea who they are. And yet they're playing pretty solid basketball, and it's pretty shocking to watch them play that well against good teams, right? And another thing that I think is really important to look at with the Steve Kerr point, let's look at Buddy Hield, right? he was almost out of the league after last year on the Sixers, where he didn't play very well. And after not playing well on 76ers last year, I don't think anybody really had much interest in him other than Golden State. He comes to Golden State and is like looking like one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. People are whispering the splash brother term when it comes to him. You know what I mean? I just think that that's a huge Steve Kerr thing. I think it's a huge Laker or Warriors culture thing. Maybe it has something to do with playing with Steph. I don't really know what's going on there, but either way, the Buddy Hield is a big factor. I think we can look back at DiVincenzo, who didn't seem like there was much interest in him after he was out of Milwaukee. Golden State brings him in. He has a pretty good year with Golden State. Not great. Goes to the Knicks. All of a sudden, next thing you know, he's second, third best 3-point shooter in the whole league. Does that have something to do with the Warriors? Does that have something to do with Kerr? Does that have something to do with playing with Steph? Hard to say, but could have something to do with all three of them. And then the last look, Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole was really good when he was with the Warriors. He was looked at as a really good player when he was with the Warriors. He gets punched in the face by Draymond Green in one of the nicest shots you'll ever see of straight left. Gets sent away to the Wizards and looks like he shouldn't even be in the NBA at this point. Send him to the China League. You know, like let him do the Baron Davis in China thing or something. You know what I mean? Like he's absolutely awful, and he looks like he's going to be a huge negative on a team he plays for, but he was not a huge negative on Golden State. He was definitely a plus player on that team. So like at some point, you got to ask why. I'm putting it to Steve Kerr.
Hey, I mean, you make a compelling case there. I'm certainly not a Steve Kerr guy. I could go on and on about this, going back to, when he first took over at Golden State and how he, we might have even talked about it in one of the earlier pods where, I think he inherited a fool's ransom there and just kind of ran with it. And, I think it's more of a player's situation. But listen, I can't argue with any of that. I think the Buddy Hield signing has been probably the biggest move for them, for sure.
I think it was the best offseason move for any team in the NBA. Like if you look at what they got for what they had to give for it.
Yeah.
I mean that guy's playing out of his mind.
Well, that's the crazy thing to me. It was like last year, when he was on Philly, right? I'm like, damn, dude, like that's kind of a dangerous player, right? But like Nick Nurse never really found a way to kind of get him utilized properly, get him comfortable. He just didn't look comfortable, right? You remember that playoff series, right, against New York? It's kind of a non-factor, minus like a few minute stretch where he hit a few.
I was going to say, bro, he hit 2 or 3 big threes in one game, like back to back. He had a big moment, and outside of that,
but otherwise, I couldn't even tell you when he was on the floor, right? So,
right, exactly.
But at the same time, I would have never foreseen him having the impact so far that he's had at Golden State. Like he's become a bigger impact than I would have even thought, right? So I think that some of that speaks to the coaching. I personally don't think that the Warriors are going to keep this up. I think you're going to see some sort of regression, which we might have seen a little bit of yesterday.
Dude,
lost to the Clippers.
What are they, 10-3 right now? Even with a loss to the Clippers, like
it's early though, man. That's what I'm saying. Is like I agree the roster is not that great. Like, and over the course of the season, I don't think that they're going to be. I think they'll make the playoffs. Whether it be through the play-in or maybe squeaking in below that. I don't think they're going to stay at the top of the West personally, but if they do, I'll be here to kind of tip my cap and say, hey, Steve Kerr, you might be able to do a little bit more than I thought you could.
Fair enough. I mean, I also do think the Buddy Hield thing, like you were saying, it's also part of the playing style, right? He's playing and he is shooting that three with just no second thought. Not even he knows before the ball is even halfway to him on a pass, whether he's going to shoot or not. And every time he's going to shoot, he just shoots with complete confidence. And I think when these guys are like ahead,
that's how they play, right? Like you're right. That's how the Warriors like to play.
That's a Steve Kerr thing, though.
And you look, is it a Steph Curry, Klay Thompson thing?
See. So what is it though? Like maybe that's the bigger question, right? Is it time to call Steve Kerr the best coach? Or is it a Warriors culture thing? Is it like something with their front office and how he sort of has it planned out, or their style? Or maybe it's the Steph effect. Maybe Steph's got the magic. I don't know.
I think it's a little bit of everything, right? Like I'm not going to say Kerr. Obviously, he's had an impact, right? Whether I want to give it to him or not.
Guy's got
I think
4
like what you,
championships as a coach. I think he's done okay. 4 chips is pretty good.
but dude, honestly, until the 22 title, I think you could almost say it was kind of like a Joe Mazzulla situation,
Yeah, I was
right?
about to say
Like,
that. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so, you know,
Right.
anyway, I'll try to avoid being the biggest fucking
No.
Golden State hater
That's
here, but
no. You're all right. You're all
yeah.
right. That's funny. So speaking of being a hater, let's bring up the Joel Embiid situation real quick. So before we even get into the situation currently, well, I think maybe a week and a half ago, Bill Simmons came out with his top 25 current NBA players, right? Joel Embiid was nowhere to be seen on the list, right? Nowhere in the top 25. Now, I kind of thought, okay, not in the top 10. Okay, not in the top 12, not in the top 15. When's he going to talk about Joel? After he finishes the top 25, he just mentions a couple guys briefly. He goes, and Joel Embiid, I don't know when he's coming back. I don't know if he's going to play. I don't know what the fuck to expect of this guy, blah, blah, blah. Right? Like, and I just kind of thought at the time, personally, I thought it was kind of a cop out because he didn't really view everybody else that way. Paolo got hurt, but he still kept Paolo super high, which I agree with. But on the other hand, Embiid comes in hurt, or he gets hurt in training camp or whatever the case was, isn't able to start playing at the beginning of the year. I get not giving him all the credit or not putting him in the top 10 or top whatever because he hasn't played. On the other hand, the guy averaged more points than he did minutes last year and was the MVP of the league. You could still consider him a top 25 player, right? Like, how is that not a top 25 player, right? Has Kawhi really made
I get it, right? Like, I was going to say Kawhi is like the next guy that comes to mind where it's like, yeah, if you're assuming everybody's at full strength, like, yes, Kawhi Leonard's a top 25 player with ease, right? Same as Joel Embiid.
Right.
Like, Joel Embiid's probably a top 5 player. If you're looking at everything as like, hey, this person could never get injured and they were guaranteed to be out there. Yeah. But like, yeah, at what point, like we've seen it so often with Embiid where it's like, yeah, why would I expect him to be out there at this point, right? Like, look at his fucking team is, and if you go back and look at our first episode, like, I had them pretty high up in the East. I was like, man, I know they're going to have some injuries, but I think they're going to kind of battle. They'll be there. I'm not so sure anymore, dude. Like, there's clearly some stuff going on. Obviously, the combination of each of those 3 guys being injured individually and all together at certain times is playing into it. But like, there's some problems in Philly. Like, I don't think it gets solved by everybody just getting back on the floor.
So speaking of the problems in Philly, that's actually that brings up the part of the point, right? So Shams Charania this morning put out an article, and in the article, he talked about the fact that there was one of these players only meetings for the Philadelphia 76ers, right? And at this player only meeting, Joel Embiid shows up late. And apparently, like, a source had it that Tyrese Maxey just started calling him out and said that he was fucking late to everything. And just said, like, he's unprofessional, this and that. And he's just calling out the star. And, like, so they're known, and he says, they're known to be friends, but felt the need to call them out. And that in this players only meeting, they cited wanting to, like, work harder, wanting to be coached harder, and all these things. When Joel was asked about it, apparently what Joel said in the meeting was like, or the message was, he accepted that. He accepted, okay, I'll be on time, let's do it right, whatever. But he also cited that he didn't really know what the team was doing on offense, as if to just like start blaming the coaches, because that's basically what you're doing when you say that. So they come in and say, you're late for everything. It's your fault that the culture sucks. It's all on you. You're the head of the team, yet you're unprofessional as hell. This and that. We want to be coached harder. And after they say we want to be coached hard, he's like, yeah, you guys are all right, but the coaching isn't good. Like, what? Like, that's what you're going to go with? Terrible look for Embiid.
It's the least surprising thing to hear from him, though. Honestly, dude. Like, we're just going through my fucking hater list right now. But, I mean, that guy, and it, in addition to being a fucking scumbag and being a dirty-ass player, in my opinion, yeah, he is somebody that's never fucking accountable, dude. Like, it's not surprising at all. And then, dude, I don't know these guys, but like Maxey gives off the vibe of somebody that's just a grinder. He's gonna fucking lead by example.
I agree.
He's not gonna fucking be lazy. So like, I love him calling out Embiid here, and I think the Sixers could be coming to a crossroads sooner than later if they don't sort things out, where it's like, you might just ship this fucking guy out of town, build around Maxey, get some picks or get some other players in return, whatever you can. I mean, if Embiid carries down this route, I mean, how much is he really worth, right? Guy's playing fucking half the games a year, and he's got this fucking.
I don't think they'll ever do that, right? I mean, first of all, Daryl Morey's not going to do that. I just don't think I think he would hold on to the asset and just like, I can't ever see him doing that. But even aside from this, it is a bad look for Embiid overall in a really bad way. And so the other part is, I went from ready to call Bill Simmons out. I'm like, how could you leave this guy off the top 25 list? To he's instantly validated as soon as I read that article. He's totally right. There's no way I'm calling that guy a top 25 player when your team is doing this bad. Clearly, either he didn't come in shape or come in ready to play. His team, I mean, if his cultural part is this bad that his teammates have to call him out, one would assume one would assume they think he should have played more also, right? They obviously think that he could have played more games, or else I don't think they call him out like that. That has to be a part of it, or that he could be playing harder, something to like, we need more from you and you're not giving it. And that, if you're naturally just like honest to God injured, there's no way that's the call out. Right. Like I just can't, I wouldn't believe it. Like there's something that doesn't fit with that. So like when you said there's something up in Philly, there is something up in Philly.
I mean, dude, they're at the fucking bottom of the East right now. Like, granted, like I said, we haven't seen everybody healthy, but like, one, there's no guarantee that we will. And then two, if there is, how fucking deep is that hole going to be to dig out of, Like, they don't start turning it around soon. Like, yes, the East is kind of weak in terms of its depth, but like, you're going to be right back in that position that they were last year if you're lucky, where you're kind of fighting uphill for a play-in spot. And then,
dude, that's what I was
playing, dude.
That's what I was just thinking, is like, how great would it be if we're sitting here at the end of the regular season and they have to win games to get to the play-in, and they get to within the one win they need in the last game of the regular season against a team that's giving them a tough time. And it comes down to like a Joel Embiid full court heave, and he almost makes another full court shot to win the game, but they lose and don't even get to go to the play-in. The 11th seed.
Oh yeah, and
what a great moment that would be.
He'll just lash out in the press conference about how it's somebody else's fault or blah blah blah. He's a fucking loser, man. Anyway, we can move on. That's enough Philly. I don't need to talk about that shit anymore. I feel bad for Maxey because, I'm big on him. I don't think he deserves a fucking teammate like that. So I hope that he gets what he needs by calling this fucker out.
For sure. So you mentioned something earlier to me about Trae Young that you want to talk about.
Oh man, see, we're just feeding the hater today. I love it. I'll keep on the hater track, man. And let me preface this by saying I do not hate Trae Young at all. I have gotten a little tired over the last few years of kind of hearing about how fucking great he is in respect to other great players in the league, while his team just continues to middle and fucking mediocrity. And it's just more of that this year. In fact, I think he's shooting a fucking career low from the field. I think he's shooting 38%. As we sit here right now, he's like bottom 10 in the fucking league at the volume he shoots it at, right? And despite that, his team's actually close to 5. I think they're 7-8, which is like kind of remarkable. So, I think you're just looking at a player where it's like, how far is this guy going to take you, right? The Hawks are going to be forever stuck in this middle of the fucking East until they either pair him with somebody like Wemby, right? Which any fucking team could say, like, hey, let's pair him with Wemby. Of course they're going to be fucking great, right? But like, you need a player like that who's just a stud defensively and also somebody that can take some of the load off offensively, right? So like, until they get that, and it's probably not going to happen, right? Like, you're kind of stuck in that middle of the road. I mean, they got a tough draft year to pick so high. There weren't really any, franchise players. So,
okay. First of all, I've watched, I think, maybe 2 games that the Hawks have played this year. I like Zachary Reese-Shea. I think he's going to be a really good player in the league. I don't know if he's going to be like an all-star or a great player, but I think he's going to be a legit good player year after year. Like, I think that guy is a legit asset. So at least I don't think that they first of all, they got the right pick. I think they picked the right guy in the draft. And second of all, at least they didn't get a number 1 draft pick that was ended up being kind of worthless like most people expected. I think that guy's going to be a legitimate good player in the NBA.
Yeah, honestly, dude, I haven't formed enough opinion about it yet, but I'm not even hating on that. It's just that was just bad luck, right? Like it's like, hey, what are you gonna do?
Right.
There wasn't a guy like that available, at least on the surface here. So like,
they were also super high in the lottery. Like they weren't supposed to get that first pick anyway.
Yeah.
So if you look at where they had the lottery, I think they did okay with that. But I think you're right.
Talking back,
go ahead.
The capture the flag discussion, right? I mean, the Hawks were a team that we both were like, they should probably go for that because what we're seeing it play out already, where it's like, okay, what's your ceiling? 7 seed, first round exit. Maybe you squeak out a first round win. They're not going to get back to that kind of crazy run that they had. And what was it, 2021, where they somehow made the conference finals? They had a pretty good roster at that point. They don't have that right now. I mean, they got what is his name? Fucking Dyson Daniels, right? Pretty fucking
He's
good
good
defender. I mean, they got some pieces, but they're with Trae Young being the head of the snake.
Yeah, it's the Trae Young problem. Yeah, right.
Yep.
It's the and it's just I think it's the nature of Trae Young, right? A guy that plays like that has a real problem defensively, right? Like he has not taken the Steph Curry defensive leap that people would have hoped he would have taken. That doesn't seem to be happening yet, right? And then also just something. I mean, his style doesn't really get anybody involved, right? I mean, it's like if you have that Steph Curry ability, but you're not the Steph Curry stylistic player, and you don't have that Warriors style around you and that team, like moving the basketball and everybody moving off the ball a lot. Rather, you're just kind of like James Harden with Steph Curry skills almost.
That's what it is, right? Like if and Trae could play more like Steph, but he chooses not to. He doesn't play off the ball very well. Doesn't like to do that.
Well, guess what, bro? They don't have Steve Kerr as a coach, do they?
Oh man, walked right into that one.
Yeah, for sure. But hey, man, give it to the Hawks though. They're 5th in the East right now, and the East is so bad that maybe we're both wrong about the capture the flag thing. Because if you're in that week of a conference, just for the sake of your fans and the culture of your team, if you can get to a random conference finals like the Hawks did however many years ago. Right? Who'd they get up? They went up and they got crushed by Milwaukee in the conference finals. That was the year they beat the Knicks in the playoffs. Right?
Yep, that's right.
Man, if you can somehow squeak your way to a conference finals because Philly's terrible and because Milwaukee's not, like Milwaukee's having their whole own thing, and maybe the Knicks have an injury or something. And what if the Hawks could somehow get to the conference finals, right? Maybe Boston and Cleveland end up so that they end up playing in the second round instead of the third round. Something happens. If it's possible for them to squeak into a conference finals and win 2 playoff series, they would be right to not capture the flag. If that's even a possibility, they'd be right to not be tanking for Cooper flag.
I agree with you. I just think that when you look at the East right now, a lot of the situations are due to what I would call explainable circumstances, which I don't see. The Knicks, I think that we all expected them to have a little bit of a learning curve in terms of them playing together. I still think that they're going to be in the top 3 come playoff time. Orlando, despite Paolo being out, they're still playing well. These are teams that, and then you look at Indiana's been disappointing. Obviously Milwaukee. I don't know if those situations are going to turn around, but I still think between Cleveland, Boston, New York, Orlando, I think that's about. I can't say anything about Philly or Milwaukee right now. I can't say with confidence that they're going to be turning it around. But I mean, you got 4 teams that I think are pretty stout. I think at the top, I don't see Atlanta being able to compete with any of those teams in a 7-game series unless something crazy changes.
Yeah, no, you're right. But on the off chance they could squeak in. That being said, if I was the coach or GM, I'd be tanking for sure. I'd be tanking because again. If they have some good pieces, you add a guy like Cooper Flag, or there are some other guys in the draft that are potentially going to be really good. You add that in that kind of a situation, Granted, it sucks to tank for the year, but this is the year where it's probably going to be worth it, or at least the best chance to be.
Yeah. I just, with respect to the Hawks, I just kind of wonder, like, you're already building a pretty young team around Trae Young, where, like, is that the guy that's going to lead an even younger team, bringing in Flag? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that gets them where they need to be. Like, I just think I keep going back to, like, I don't think Trae Young's the guy there,
Right. Well, I was going to say if that's the case, the move would have to be try to bring in the next guy, the next Cooper Flag, the next whoever, and then you just let
Yeah.
Trae Young's contract play out. You don't re-sign him, let him go in free agency. Some team will be stupid enough to give him some money, and you get rid of him. Like, man, when you got
or
sour
you
apple,
trade him
you
in the
still eat it.
last
Like,
year and get something. You feel that out going into the last. Yeah.
this is something that I saw on a podcast recently where they went over and they said, the Trae Young trade. Let's try to build the Trae Young. It might have been the Bill Simmons podcast, and they were talking about the Trae Young trade machine. Who would you trade him for? If you go through each team in the league, there isn't a team that would really want to do it or should want to do it. I actually kind of disagreed with them because I personally think the Wizards would be the right fit. Right? When your franchise has nothing and does nothing, having the worst star in the league that can still generate some wins, generate big moments, generate crowd enthusiasm, fan enthusiasm, that's actually probably the right fit. Like I don't think anyone expects the Wizards to do anything as an organization in the next X amount of years. Right? They're clearly the worst organization in the league. Their team, the way
team
their
is
the roster construction has been absolutely horrible since they had Paul Pierce. And that was when
pretty bad,
Bradley
man.
Beal was good and John Wall was good. So that was when John Wall was good. It's close to a decade ago. Right? Like that, they've had a horrible roster construction every year since then. I just that's the only I would do that.
You didn't like Russ and Brad Beal?
Russ kind of played good at the end there. He had a run where he was playing really good.
He
And it's
did.
so weird. It's so weird to watch Russ play that good because it's like, where are you when it counts, or the rest of your career when you need a guy to like actually play winning basketball, and then the winning Russ comes out, you're just like, what is going on? Because he doesn't usually play like that, man.
To me, it's clear, like in some ways, that he kind of like the way that Trae Young plays, right? Or I think you take a guy out of that situation and they're not comfortable not being the guy, not running everything, having it flow through them. And that's how Russ played his whole career, right? So it really started when he went to the Lakers, right? Where it was like, hey man, we can't have you running the show, right? I mean, Russ was a great, he was a great floorizer. Like Washington was a perfect example, but he's not going to like add to a team that already has an established like cadence to them and they have a way that they play. He's not like he comes in and disrupts that because he only plays the way that he knows how to play.
So do you think that's what happened in LA? Because first of all, I don't think that's where it started. I think it started in Houston because he wasn't very good in Houston with James Harden. He was better than he was in LA. He was okay.
But yeah,
but he wasn't as good of Russ as I expected him to be.
Because they're the same type of player, right? Again, Harden is the guy that heliocentric, you run the offense, he needs the ball in his hands.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the question. Is that what happened in LA with the Lakers, or was it something more? Because watching it from like the third person perspective, including the media narrative that was on it, it looked like to me a straight sabotage job. Like I honestly think that LeBron James stuck his neck out to get Russ. We know that he was tight with Russ and they were really close before Russ went to the Lakers. They were always like every summer you'd see Russ at LeBron's house smoking the cigars in the video and shit. You remember seeing those videos? Those used to come out like all the time, and like they would chill together off season, like off the court. They were clearly tight, like families knew families kind of stuff is what it looked like. So
Russ is from LA, right? I mean, he's got ties to the area,
right? Yeah. Of course, right? Exactly, right. So he clearly wanted to go to LA. They were tight. LeBron obviously stuck his neck out to get Russ, which was like the worst GM thing he's done in his whole career, and he's done some pretty bad GM things. And it's the last GM thing he did also. That kind of got him out of the GMing game as a player.
Well, dude,
if that's out of a move.
If that's true, right? Like, which I think there's always that kind of like speculation around like, oh, how much pull did LeBron have, and like, what moves did he have?
Had the pull at that point, man.
If it's true that he pulled the strings on Russ, I totally agree. Like that should wipe away any sort of fucking credibility you have as a GM, because that move was fucking terrible, dude. Like,
dude, that's very well said.
It's like not only just
Nah, you got
acquiring
it.
him for like he wasn't a good fit on the team, but
Well,
taking on that contract at that point, in addition to all that,
oh
was
my god, so bad for
it
them.
was just a death
So bad.
sentence as soon as
Yeah,
they
no,
made the
you're right.
trade. Yeah.
But that brings up to the sabotage point. Watching how bad Russ was, he was so much worse than I've ever seen him in any other situation. That, you know me, like, I naturally tend to have conspiracy theories. That's just kind of the way my mind works a little bit. As I was watching, that was when I was still watching LeBron. I would watch Lakers almost every game just because LeBron was still holding on to his prime at that last point. And I really felt like I just wanted to see what he could do with that. Now I don't really watch the Lakers that much because I feel like even though what LeBron's doing is crazy, and we should probably talk about his 4 straight triple doubles, because I did watch 2 of those games and he's playing out of his mind right now, as a matter of fact. But at that point,
great.
I couldn't believe what Russ was doing, because Russ was playing openly some of the worst basketball I've ever seen. He would throw the ball out of bounds for no reason, like he was passing to someone that was a ghost and just not there. He was making all these unbelievably bad turnovers, the worst time turnovers, playing so bad. I truly, and at that moment in time, at least, maybe not now, but at that moment, I swear to God, I believed that him and LeBron got into it on some alpha male shit in like preseason that year, before the year started. And I think they got into some words and maybe even got physical. Who knows? But I think that Westbrook suddenly looked at LeBron different and said, "Oh, you want to fuck with me? You want to call me out like that? You're supposed to be the GOAT. I could end your GOAT case right now. I could end your GOAT case right now. You want to find out if I can end your GOAT case right now? Let me end your GOAT case right now." Like,
I think that guy's too stubborn and he thinks too highly of himself to pull that. But I will say he was playing so badly that, like, that's not out of the realm of possibility for me.
But that's my point. It's how
he was literally maybe like a bottom 5 player in the league. And then if you factor in the contract, he was absolutely the worst player in the league that year. Like,
I don't care if he was making a dime,
bad, dude.
No, I don't care if he made $50 million a year or he made $20 a year. I don't care what his salary was. He was the most detractive. Like, he subtracted so much from his team. Like, in terms of eye test plus minus, if you didn't know anything about stats or whatever, and someone explained the idea of a plus minus and you watched him play on that team, you'd say, "Oh my God, that guy must average being a minus 20 player." It was just all
everything,
around,
right?
I think it was some of the worst basketball I've ever seen.
It was. I mean, it absolutely was. I think with respect to LeBron, some of it's on him, right? If he did make that move, because like you had to be like, man, how's that going to work? Like, he had to think about it playing out on the floor, and like clearly to me, if you're going to bring in Russ, you can't do it at that contract. But since you did, he needs to run the second unit, and he needs to not be on the floor with LeBron and AD at the same time. Like, it was.
That would be on some Carmelo. That's on some Carmelo Anthony. Hey, yo, P, they want me to come off the bench. You remember that with Melo? I think you'd have something even worse than that with. I don't think Russ was coming off the bench.
But I do think that they ended up talking him into it like later in the season after it got so bad.
But that's after he'd already sabotaged the whole season by then, single-handedly, bro. He'd already ruined their whole year by himself easily. And he did it easily too, because they needed him to play a big enough role. Dude.
Well,
it was bad.
Just to put a bow on it, I mean, we all remember, right? Like, once they finally got rid of him, the fucking Lakers made a miraculous turnaround, went to the conference finals.
I was going to say that same year,
I mean,
right?
If you needed any sort of validation that Russ was the real problem there, it was that.
Right.
But sure. It's almost sad now. Like, there's really no need to pile on with that guy, you know? Like, I actually,
fair enough.
Let me say this, dude. I actually really liked him for a lot of his career. Like, when he was in OKC, he was one of my favorite players in the league. When he had that MVP season there, dude, and I was like, oh, KD left him high to dry, and he fucking dragged that team. That's the best Russ to me, right? Like, and kind of anything after that, you start to sour because he'd be fucking barking at fans, fighting. And it's just like, dude, you can just chill for a minute. Yep. Not everything needs to be such a fucking, like, it got a little old, right?
Nah, but you're right. When Russ was in OKC and he knew he had the city behind him, it was a better version of Russ that brought out.
Oh, it was electric, dude. Sure. That was for sure.
Well, here's what I always said about Russ, like, especially for considering we've always had that conversation that we thought he'd never win a championship, and that was that curse of Russell Westbrook thing. But no matter what you thought about Russ in terms of him as a player, he has always been, for at least a really long stretch, the most entertaining and maybe the most fun player to watch in the league. Right. And something about he has like it's almost like what Giannis does, but because it's the athleticism is so much more like basketball athleticism instead of freak athlete athleticism, like and with good ball handling and like good motion. I always just thought it was just the best thing to watch. Just watching what he could do every night was just so ridiculous. I thought it was one of the most entertaining, if not the most entertaining player in the league thing that he had for a really long time. Right. And
Well,
that
yeah,
actually
dude. I
makes
mean,
me kind of
at
oh,
his
go ahead.
size, dude. I mean,
Right.
no question, one of the most explosive NBA athletes that I can remember. I mean, no argument there, man. He was fun to watch. He
Yeah.
just, he could never slow that pace down, man. He was always a million miles a minute, right? Where like
Yeah.
some people say, "Oh, he's LeBron if he was 6'3". Now LeBron plays with some pace, and he knows when to
Right.
fucking, like Russ just never really was able to kind of adapt his game and slow it down, and that was his Achilles heel, right? I think he could have had a better career if he had a little bit more, or a little less ego, maybe, or a little less stubbornness. But anyway, the guy never had a jump shot, so
I don't know,
it
man.
is
I think
what it
that
is.
I actually no, I completely agree with you. I think if he didn't have the ego issue that he has to the level that he has it, I think that team wins a championship. Right? Like if you
What,
remember,
Young when they were in the finals, that team?
young Russ, either that team or maybe the year before that, or maybe a few years before when they had Harden. But if you remember that team that went to the finals, Russ was really, really bad in the finals. And it was also like the ego Russ of like, even though I'm bad, I'm still going to try to take over 24/7. And it's just like, it was
He had
just
that
something
one
that KD
really good,
couldn't overcome. He
like,
might have had like one game, but he had a couple really bad moments. And there were a lot of moments that he had that were bad that were like, I'm going to take over in important moments and then just make bad mistakes or shoot really bad shots. And that's kind of what brought up that whole curse of Russell Westbrook thing from the beginning. That's why I always thought that was just like, man, if you could play your
it's
best
hard.
basketball at the right times, he could
James
just
Harden was pretty bad in that finals. He was good in that playoffs, really good, in fact, but he
right.
was. And then I think some of the KD, I mean, those guys were all really young, right? Like
Yeah.
KD,
Yeah.
you got to step up and be the fucking guy. Then and
Well,
he played great in the finals, but like every time I watch KD, like that's kind of what you say about it. It's just kind of like it never feels that dominant, right? It's just kind of like, yeah, he's gonna hit his jump shots, he can do this and that, but he never like asserts his fucking dominance on a game to me.
I think he's done that more as he's gotten deeper into his career. I thought he did that on the Nets kind of a lot, actually. Like I thought that's when he was
That's
really doing a
fair.
lot. He definitely did a lot on the Warriors, but he didn't necessarily
Yeah.
need to, right? But what I will
Well, it's
say
also
about that is
really
that
fucking easy to do on when the floor looks like that with
right.
all those guys out there. Like,
Right, and it's definitely not easy to do when you're on Russell Westbrook's team, especially the young version of Russ, who was
yeah.
like, if you remember, but back that super young version of Russ was so ultra alpha male. You got to think that those two got into it at practice, and like it was made clear who was the more alpha male. I mean, maybe that had something to do with like KD's willingness to take over in those big playoff moments, especially in the finals when Russ was like choosing to take over instead, which goes back to like my original point, like how much of that is on KD and how much of that is on like Russ? You've sunned this guy 18 times in a row in practice and just kind of like stood over him in some kind of way or something, like even though he's like 8 feet
Yeah,
taller than you. Like
I could see
I don't know
that
how
being
much could
true.
that contribute? It could, and it would make sense that KD would
Well,
be on the other end of that for his
over
personality. Like,
time, I feel like it definitely could, right?
well,
Especially when
right,
you
but
saw how
that
everything
was
ended,
towards the
right?
end of the
Like
whole run. Yeah,
that
exactly.
fucking 3-1 choke job.
Yep.
That's gonna all the shit that happened in the past is gonna fucking bubble up and yep.
Show itself. So like, to me, that's again part of the whole Russell Westbrook conversation. But it brings something up that I do want to talk about. So I actually went to a couple basketball games recently, a couple good NBA games, and one of them was that was the Magic or was the Memphis Grizzlies at the Brooklyn Nets, right? And this is the game. I don't know if you saw the highlights, but Ja Morant hit 2 360 layups. Did you see this highlight?
Yeah, it did see that.
So that was the game that I was at. We had really good seats. And the 360 highlight, the 360 layup thing, first of all, Ja Morant, he may or may not be one of the top players in the league. Personally, I might have him in like the top 20-ish area, around the 20-ish, somewhere around there probably, right? But he has that Russell Westbrook. He's the most entertaining player in the league. He does ridiculous things all the time, super athletic things in person.
That level
It's
of athleticism, dude. I mean, it had to be. I've never seen him up close in person, but I would imagine it's pretty remarkable to watch.
yeah, that's what I would say. Literally to anyone listening right now, if you have a chance to go see Ja Morant in person with even somewhat decent seats, so you really get to see what's going on, like, and really see it, you should just go. Just go to the game and watch what Ja Morant can do. Because every game he does something, and seeing it in person is legitimately different. So those 2 360 layups, the first one happens, and it's just nobody in the arena missed it. And it's almost like we couldn't believe it because no one expected him to do that. And it was such a shock that everyone instantly on their feet. Everyone in the arena instantly on their feet.
Yeah.
And like, it's not, I don't even know if it's the noise or the way everyone was talking. Oh, like something about that moment was just like you could feel it, like you're squeezing an orange. It was crazy, right? And then the second,
Like shit that people don't see, right? People don't see that
dude,
every day or every fucking
in
year or whatever,
in
right?
such a big way. And also that first one was like, it didn't seem like that's what he was going to do until he pulled it off. You're like, what the fuck is he doing? Whoa! Like it just
Yeah.
it really like defied logic that he was even going to try it, let alone that he made it. And it was, again,
Yeah.
like I said, nobody missed it. So like it was such a crazy moment in the moment. And then the second one, which was in the second half on the other basket, was almost like the opposite. And the crowd actually had a really good reaction. And shockingly, the Nets crowd is consistently a really good crowd in Brooklyn. And I don't know if it's just like New York City, the city of basketball, they have a lot of really good basketball fans, or if it's also there's a lot of people that have always been Knicks fans, and we know Knicks fans are really good fans and always a really good crowd at MSG, or what it is. But the Nets crowd is usually a really good crowd. So the second 360 spin layup, he does the 360 spin thing. He like leans into him or whatever in the first part of it, and it's almost like you see what's developing and happening. And the crowd, as he does like this double clutch to do the layup, the crowd did a double clutch reaction where like we all gasped, and then he makes like so like, and everyone did it together in the crowd. It was so good, such a good
That's
moment. So
hilarious.
dude, if you can go see Ja live, go see Ja Morant live because it was really sick, and he definitely has that special ability to make really special things happen. He did a couple other things in the game that were like he just makes special things happen when he shouldn't be able to. Sometimes he'll do it with these weird cross court passes or something that you're not expecting him to make, but he's always making these weird plays. He made that awesome alley oop pass when he was on the ground the other day. Did you see that one too?
No, I didn't see that one.
Okay, so he's literally, it's like a loose ball. It's a loose ball. He dives down for it, grabs it, and he's like sitting on his ass, right? And he like fakes a pass to one guy, and the guy cuts to the hoop, and the defender goes for the fake pass, and he throws it over the defender and throws an alley oop pass from like 3 feet inside the three is where he was sitting, and it was a sick alley oop. And it was just like he just does these things that nobody else is going to do in the league that you'd never expect. And for sure, he's the most entertaining player in the league. But I also think if you can see him live, go see him live. It's so good.
Dude, I mean, we've talked about it before. Like, I'm not a big, I'm not gonna say I'm not a Morant guy. I feel like I look at all that stuff in the scope of like how people are viewed versus like how I actually think they are. And like he to me has been a guy who's been overvalued on average. Incredible player, really good athlete. Not quite like you said, top 20. He's not really in that upper echelon of NBA players for me. Like he's not an all NBA level player to me, like on a year-to-year basis. And you know, I think kind of just segueing into like the Western Conference landscape conversation here, that this was, one of the things we said going in was like the West is just so stacked, right? It's so deep. And, I'm looking at the standings right now and guess who's just sitting, right outside of the play-in right now in 11th place? Dallas.
Oh no,
Dallas.
that's tough. Yeah.
But I mean, but it's
They've
it's
had like a 4 or
so
5 game
tight.
losing streak though.
Yeah, I mean, and there's like one game between 11th and 6th, right? Like it's just so. But
Exactly.
I mean, just looking at how the season's going to play out, like I think some of these teams are going to be pretty fucking competitive, like we thought, right? Even San Antonio
Yep.
looks to be a little bit more competitive than I was giving credit for, at least. So I
Right.
mean,
Right.
you got Portland, who's 6-8 right now, probably a little better than I think they're going to kind of peter off. New Orleans, who I had kind of fallen down, they're down there. Utah, everybody else, even the Clippers, dude. I mean, they're right
Well,
there so far.
Dude, the
Norm
Clippers are actually
Powell's
pretty
been
good so
fucking
far. Yeah.
playing some ball, man. And I don't even know where I was going with this, but it's just a pretty incredible landscape in the West where like a lot of non-surprises, but there's a lot of good teams, you know. I wouldn't be surprised to see this play out in a number of different ways, kind of, 20 games from now. I think
Yep.
there's still going to be a lot of these teams still in the
Yep.
mix that are currently sitting where they are.
Well, let's actually go through that. But before we even get to that, I do want to just to counter the Ja argument really quick. I will say this for Ja. I think if he was on a better team, it might look a lot different in how good he is. Right. And especially seeing them live, it's when you see live games, you see the scope of the size and the athleticism to such a greater extent in person. Right. And what I will say is that
Yep.
Jaren Jackson Jr., his ugly jump shot and his willingness to shoot it is a really big problem for that team. The fact that they don't have anywhere to turn except Ja's magic on offense on a lot of possessions is a really big problem for that team. They try to really depend on this athleticism thing where they're going to play good defense and then be able to run the floor. And you have Ja running the floor, which is magic. And Jaren Jackson's great running the floor, and a lot of their guys are good running the floor. And Zach Edey's good. He's promising, but it's just not a good team. And they're just lacking shooting in such a way that, when Jaren Jackson's forcing up those ugly, ugly threes where he's like even a little off balance with like a push shot, kind of like it's just not a good look for them. And
Yeah.
honestly, I do think if Ja were on a good team, we wouldn't be saying this. And you know what's actually funny? I think
Oh,
the best team for
you could
Ja to
be
be
right.
on, dude, if Ja was on the Lakers, they would be all set. That's who they need. They need to trade D'Lo for Ja, which is an impossible trade. They could never make it
Yeah,
happen.
that's just never.
But
It'll never happen.
he would love it, and it would. I mean, well, who knows?
Well,
Sun's out,
Memphis,
guns out. Ja Morant.
I will say, man. I mean, they've been better. I mean, they probably haven't been as good as you thought they'd be, but for me, they're actually exceeding the expectations I had for them right now. Like they're 8-7. They've been pretty competitive. They've beat a couple good teams. I think that it's possible that they could continue to get better. Like Edey's just getting started. Ja's still coming back. He's only played, 15 games.
I know, man, but the supporting cast is not good. Maybe I caught them on a
No.
night where a lot of them had off nights and whatever. And when you see a team in person, obviously it makes a way bigger imprint on your mind than when you watch them on TV. So like
Well, it's a
I
lot of
may
the
have a
same
very biased
cast
view.
we've seen, right? Like it's a lot of the same cast we've seen. So like
Those aren't
they're not great. Like
those
they're
aren't
they're
good
not.
players.
So anyway, man, I mean, we'll
Yeah.
see how it plays out with them, but
But yeah, no, let's get back
yeah.
to the Western Conference. So in terms of how we think it's going to look in maybe a month or two here as they get more games into the season and some of these, crazy
Let's
starts
do that.
kind of wind out, right? So I think OKC is going to stay at the top. It seems like you don't think Golden State's going to stay in that number 2 spot, right?
Yeah,
I would
so give me
go ahead.
your biggest riser and your biggest faller from the West
Okay.
right now. Like let's just
That's a
do it
real
that way.
that's a real good way to play this. I think the biggest faller is actually going to be Houston. Because at 10-5, I just don't think that they have the roster to really continue to win throughout the regular season at that rate. Could be wrong. And Epe Udoka is a hell of a coach, and they're playing really good. And I love Alperen Sengun. And the few games I've watched him, Jalen Green was really
fucking
good.
Good, man.
Sengun's really good, and I mean they're playing hot right now. They're definitely playing hot right now, but that just gives me the inclination that it's not going to hold up. So, in terms of the biggest flaw, I would immediately look to Houston, right? Just because I don't think the other teams are likely to fall because maybe
That's
KD
fair.
got hurt, so Phoenix, but I like Phoenix right now, and I like Budenholzer as their coach, right? Did Coach Bud go to Phoenix? Is that right?
Yeah. He's in
That's what I
Phoenix.
thought. But I like Coach Budenholzer. I think that he shouldn't have gotten fired to begin with from Milwaukee, right? I think that the Lakers, as long as Anthony Davis continues to be this Anthony Davis and LeBron doesn't get hurt, they should continue to have a pretty good year. I personally like Golden State, and I definitely think OKC is going to stay OKC. Now,
Yeah.
in terms of risers, you know, like obviously I'm tempted to say Minnesota at 8-6, but they're already 8-6, and it's like you said, the West is so close that it's hard to really say. But I mean, in terms of risers, honestly, looking at
And
them,
like,
I
don't even
actually
look
think
at
it's
like by
Minnesota.
position, right? Because I don't like you look at it and you say,
Well, no,
oh,
I'm trying to look at it by win
like
loss
by
record and
record.
just
Yeah, yeah, okay.
win
That's how I'm
percentage
looking at
basically,
it too. Yeah, yeah.
right? But I don't see the problem is I don't trust in Dallas. That's the real problem is I don't trust in the Mavericks. I mean, granted, Kyrie has proven himself to be better than I've given him credit for a couple of years now, right? I kind of thought he was washed and like the off the court stuff got in the way of his basketball, but clearly he's still Kyrie Irving, and they do have Luka. But first of all, Luka Doncic is playing some of the worst defense I've ever seen in really important moments. Like there are times where they're getting wide open layups because Luka. That was like they had they played a game. I think when they lost against was it like Utah or some not a good team that beat them, and literally the last play of the game where they got scored on. Luka scores on one end, comes back, and just completely doesn't get the coverage on defense when they set the pick, doesn't follow the other guy, and they just throw it over the top, and the other guy gets a layup, and Luka throws his hands up, and it's just like, oh man, and that's another thing I hate that Luka does a lot, and LeBron does it a lot that I hate it too. When guys get beat on defense and they start pointing at other players like it's not their fault because they know they're about to go viral for sucking on defense, like dude, just man up and just run down the court. You know, like try to be fucking Nikola Jokic, who anytime anything happens, just puts his head down and runs down the court like a horse. You know what I mean? Because
Well,
he loves
right. Like
horses so much.
I think
But
there's a difference
shows
between
no
like pointing
reaction.
finger and like I love when guys bark at each other about like missed rotations and stuff. Like if you're like that's how you communicate, right? But like there's a difference between like
That's
putting
not
that
what
out
I'm
and just
talking
being
about.
like like throwing your hands up or yeah, I'm with you, man.
LeBron.
Well, anyway, let's not get too far off
LeBron.
topic here.
Okay,
Give me your biggest riser in the
I
West.
honestly at this point I think I'd have to say the T-Wolves. Just because Santa Claus, I don't know if you saw the commercial tonight, but Ann Edwards, Santa
No.
Claus. There's a good commercial where he plays Santa Claus. Pretty funny for Sprite. Santa Claus, hilarious. But I think Ann Edwards, man, he is just, if you're not an Ann Edwards believer, go watch him play more basketball. You know, Randall had that game winner the other night that, first of all, that team played amazing defense on Devin Booker, including Anthony Edwards, and the whole team playing defense that last possession when Phoenix should have iced it. Phoenix got like 3 or 4 offensive rebounds and bricked every shot they shot because the defense was really good outside of not rebounding the ball. Right. And then they come down. Randall hits that great game winner. Randall also hit like, I don't know if it was a buzzer beater, but he also hit like a last second shot at halftime that game. He basically had 2 buzzer beaters the same game.
Did he, man?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm with you. Out west, that's my biggest riser. I just think, like you said, Minnesota's defense is going to be there to stay, and I think they're still kind of figuring out how all the new pieces kind of fit together offensively. But I got faith in that core kind of figuring it out. I think they're going to be a good team. I think we both had them in maybe second or third predicted to start the year. I still think they're going to end up towards there. My biggest faller, it's really hard to argue your logic on Houston, even as somebody who I kind of had them in that like 5 spot potentially going into the season. I could see them falling from where they are now, but I'm going to go with Golden State. Yeah. Some of it, is maybe me being a stubborn hater, but I think there's some guys that are kind of playing out of their ass that will not continue to do that. And I'm just going to leave it at that. You want to do the same thing out east here?
Well, like, I mean, what we can do that in a second. What happens if Steph Curry gets hurt for like 2 weeks even? Right? They'll probably lose every single game if they don't have Steph.
Well,
that's a team that
he's he's missed a couple games and they won those. I think it
That's
was
true.
real. It was
That's true.
real
You're right.
early,
I totally forgot. No, you're right. I forgot about that. They did win
but
those games. I didn't
but
watch those games.
but extended stretches, I totally agree. Like if he re-injures that ankle even worse and he's out 2-3 weeks, like yeah, they might be in some trouble. But
By the way, before we finish with the Western Conference, you're making such a good point when you're talking about how tight it is. I didn't even realize how tight it is out west. The 5th ranked team in the Western Conference is the Nuggets. They're 8-5. They're 2.5 games back. The 11th team in 11th place, as you said, is Dallas. They're 3.5 games back. They're in 11th, and they're only 1 game back from the 5 seed. The difference between the 5 seed and being out of the playoffs is 1 game, and we're 14 games into the regular season, which is like an 18% or something. Like, that's crazy.
So to caveat what I just said, depending on how you want to look at it, the Clippers might be the biggest faller. But in terms of like,
I should have had that too. You're right.
If you're in the play-in and you're falling out, it's not as impactful to me as where Golden State is. I don't think that they're going to be a 50-win team this year.
No, it's big. It's biggest riser, biggest faller. Clippers was the right call. All right, let's take it to the East with the biggest riser, biggest faller. I like that.
It's the East is tougher because it's almost the opposite right now, where like you only have to go down 5 teams to find somebody that's under 500. So it's I'm almost tempted to say biggest faller for me is probably just Cleveland, just off the fact that like when you're up that high, like you're gonna fall at some point. This team's not that good. I think they're going to be a top 3 team when the regular season ends, but are they going to continue at this rate? I don't see it. Not even trying to shade them at all. They've been playing fantastic basketball, but that's probably my pick there. I mean, if you want to include a team that's kind of in a middling spot that's going to fall.
No, I mean, I think Atlanta's in the conversation. Granted, they're already 7-8. But I could see them tank, like, in a situation where they end up having a tank, just because I have so little faith in them as a team. Like, granted,
they're going to be my next pick.
I don't think I've watched them a ton. I haven't watched a lot of Atlanta, maybe 2 games so far this year. But I just don't believe in them. And to me, that, I just don't see how I don't even know how they got 7 wins out of 15 games. That's a little shocking. Maybe I should look at their schedule, see how much free. Yeah, I know, man. But that Knicks loss is completely on the Knicks. That Knicks loss, they were up by 5 with or maybe they were up by like 6 or 7 with like 2.5 minutes left or 2 minutes left, and they literally didn't score again, and they lost the game by 5 or 6 points. They let the other team go on. The Hawks went on like an 11-0 run, led by Trae Young in the last 2.5 minutes, and the Knicks completely blew it. That was a despicable loss, dude. That's on some. So
that segues into my next pick of biggest riser.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the Knicks for me because, like I said, I totally agree with you, man. Well, there's been of those 6 losses, I'd say 4 of them have been of that variety where you're just like, how the hell did they lose that? And you watch them play, and I think granted they've been playing some weaker competition recently, but like they're just starting to jive a little bit better, right? I think there's something to be said for like, hey, you can still look pretty bad and not fluid against those bad teams, which like they look pretty good. Right. I'm not even counting the Wizards game, but the Nets, who I think are kind of a tough, they're not like a joke like I thought they would be.
Yeah, no. People aren't walking over the Nets. People aren't walking over the Nets.
So I'm going Cleveland biggest faller, New York biggest riser, and then, the only other team that I would consider for biggest risers maybe Milwaukee, but with Doc Rivers at the helm, I'm not fucking putting my name attached to that right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I do think Milwaukee could rise up a lot just because when you start out 5-9, no, I mean, even now it's almost no chance they don't end up in the playoffs or at least the play-in. And they have too much talent. And I don't think Dame is washed, even though he's been playing like he's washed. I think we're going to see that better version of Dame come out again. And ultimately, that's all that they really need to be a much better team than they started off at the very least.
I just don't. We talked about this going into the season too. I just don't love their roster. Like I feel like it's been kind of stale. You got Connaughton, Lopez. It's kind of a lot of the same
Bobby
faces where
Portis.
like it's just not moving me anymore, right? And like the older
Yeah.
Giannis gets, like, bro, like don't make him erase everything on defense. Like he's not going to do that anymore. Like he's
Right.
like you can't. He could still do that, like if he needed to, but like at this point, like, dude, he can't carry a team like that
Well,
for 82 games
I don't think that's it. I don't even think it's that. I think
on
he has
both
to
ends of
do.
the court. I mean, like what
No,
he's
no,
going
no.
to
I
do
no, no, no. But
offensively.
I don't think he needed to do it before the way that they're asking him to do it now. Even like he looked like he was doing it then, because when the team is defending well, he's able to get more steals. Right, he's able to get crazy rebounds and run down the floor for a dunk. Right, like he's able to do more in transition and do more things when the rest of the team is defending well. And I think Drew Holiday is the big part of that. Right, like that,
Oh,
and
for sure, dude. That was
Middleton
the
being
biggest
injured.
loss.
Right,
Yeah,
but you lose
yeah,
Drew Holiday. Middleton, who actually plays good defense a lot of the time, gets injured and has had this whole issue where he hasn't been playing a lot in general for goodness knows how long by now. Like I don't even know how long. What
well, at
Middleton's
this point,
injury
like
history is.
you can't expect it to return to what it was, right? I mean, I'm a big Middleton guy. I'm a Bucks
Right.
guy.
So, well, but just that alone, you replace that with Dame and whoever else then for not for Middleton, and now Giannis doing that both ways. The defensive burden is way more than it was as he's getting older, and you add that to like that age factor where like he shouldn't be asked to do what he used to, let alone more than he used to, and he's doing it
Right.
successfully, but the team can't win because of that.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, they don't have it's just a little too top heavy offensively, right? Like outside of Dame, I mean, Andre Jackson Jr., great player, more of a defensive player. He's not knocking down shots. There are other pieces, like I said, Middleton's not there. He's in and out. Connaughton's getting older. I mean, like, I just don't love their team, right? Especially compared to like I look at Orlando or New York, obviously Cleveland and Boston, like they're just way more well-rounded. They're just way better built at this point. So like
Yeah.
I think Milwaukee has I think it's not a hot take to say like they've fallen from that top echelon.
Definitely.
Doc
Well,
Rivers
that's
or no Doc
for sure.
Rivers.
No, dude, that's not a take. That's a fact. That's obvious, right? Like, that's clear at this point. So here's something that I do want to talk about really quick about the Bucks. Now that we're having the Bucks conversation, right? We've heard a lot about this second apron. We've heard a lot about all these different things with the salary cap. But here's why the second apron really actually does matter. The Bucks are in this situation where, as we just described, their roster is not built correctly. They're not set up to really be a winning team, at least, like you said, an upper echelon winning team, even in the Eastern Conference at this point. And now they're in a situation because of the second apron, they can't really fix their team, right? They can't trade more than one player at a time. It has to be player for player. They can't take in more money than they're sending out, which sets up a bunch of different problems, right? So there's very little that they can actually do to make a trade that's going to incentivize another team to actually bring in more talent. They've already given up so many of their future picks acquiring the team that they have. They had to trade for Drew, then they traded Drew away and had to trade for Dame, right? They made all these moves where they don't have that many assets anymore. They're in a
Yeah.
position where they have nothing to offer, especially with that second apron restriction. Now, here's the real reason why it matters. Let's say things go wrong and Giannis gets a little injury this year or Dame gets hurt or something, and they just start playing really, really bad. If they don't even make the play-in and they're in the lottery and they somehow end up with the 1 to 4 pick, they don't get the pick. It goes to the Pelicans. Right? So what if they get
they might be picking down there already. Pelicans might.
what
That's hilarious. Which
what
they
if
won't. But you're right. They're one
dude,
Giannis injury away from that. Right.
you're one Giannis or even one Dame injury away from, oh my God, we're a lottery team. Oh my God, we got the first pick. It's Cooper Flag, and he's going to the Pelicans. You don't get shit for it. And
Yeah, man.
that's why the second apron matters, because when that team has that, they get when they have that trade pick situation where they have that trade that's contingent on being in the 1 through 4 pick, which is so unlikely for a team like, you have Giannis. You can't imagine you're going to be in the lottery, let alone there's any chance you'll get that number 1 pick or the 1 through 4 pick. So that you're not going to lose that pick. But because the second apron, now when you have this team where the roster construction didn't go the way you were hoping it was going to go, and you're in this bad situation, now you can't fix it, and you desperately need to fix it so that you don't end up giving away the first pick to a team like the Pelicans.
Or to anyone, right? I mean, imagine just giving away the pick at that level, dude. Like,
I love saying the Pelicans, because then you have the Pelicans, who that franchise would have had number 1 pick, or I guess Chris Paul wasn't a first pick, I don't think. Right?
No,
or was
I think he was
first pick?
3. I think he was 3rd overall.
You got Chris Paul in the draft. Then you got Anthony Davis, number 1 pick. Then you got Zion Williamson, number 1 pick, and you did absolutely nothing with any of them yet. How hilarious would it be if that team ended up being Cooper Flag? The ones to get Cooper Flag.
I'd feel bad for Cooper Flag.
I would too, but it would just be
CP3 was 4th overall, by the way.
Really? Yeah. What year was that? 2006?
2005.
5. Who went in that draft?
Bogut, number 1 overall. Talking about bringing it full circle to the Bucks on first picks.
Wow, that's funny.
But yeah, man. I mean, dude. I mean, Milwaukee's going to obviously, like, the Drew move was, to me, I mean, that was a bad move on their part. That kind of snowballed into, like, I think Dame's a great player, but that move also kind of, it put them in a spot that they're in today, where, like, I honestly think you might be better off trading Dame and just getting some picks back. Because I think you can continue to build around Giannis and some younger players if you draft well, if you trade for a couple round out pieces. It gives you more flexibility, right? Like, I don't think Dame's moving the needle like he used to, personally. Like, he's a great player still, but, like, he's just such a bad defensive player too, that, like, if you look at him versus Drew Holiday and what they brought to those teams, like, it's one of the rare instances where you can say, hey, defense fucking mattered, like,
for sure.
Drew
that's how they won a championship.
But he did enough offensively too, man. Right? Like, he wasn't. No, he's not Dame Lillard,
that guy, though. But Drew's still that guy. Even on Boston, you can count on Drew offensively, even though he's maybe the best lockdown small guard defender in the league.
Yeah, 100% agree, man. He just plays winning basketball, dude. Like,
big time. And let's look at the snowball that you mentioned, right? And this is just a lesson for teams and franchises across the league. If you look at it, they lose to Miami in round 1 as the first seed. They lose to 8 seed Miami. First of all, that Miami Heat team ended up going to the finals. So you lost to the team that went to the finals. And second of all, that was the series where Giannis fell on his back. And
that was bubble. Wasn't that bubble ball?
I don't think that was bubble ball. I think that was 2022. That was the year that Steph did the Warriors beat the Heat?
They lost to the Heat twice as favorites. You might be right. As the 1 seed, you're right. It was 2022. But they lost in the bubble the Heat as well.
No, yeah, maybe the Heat didn't make the finals that year, and that was the year the Celtics made the finals against the.
It was, yeah.
Or it was the following year. But either way, the Heat went deep into the playoffs the year where they lost to the Bucks. I think that was 2 years ago. The Bucks lost to the Heat, right? I'm pretty sure they were the 1 seed. And I'm pretty sure
Jimmy went nuclear, and
it was fucking but that awesome. Was also if you also remember, that was when Giannis fell and hurt his back, and he was like, his back was spasming when he turned over. You could see his back spasming, and that's an injury that you're just not going to come back from in the playoffs, right? So I think they just really overreacted to the Giannis injury, and they ended up firing Coach Bud, who, as I've said, I think is a really good coach, and he looks really good in Phoenix right now, right? So I think firing Coach Bud. Overreaction, panic move, mistake.
Don't look now, but they fucking fired Adrian Griffin after that, and that's why Doc Rivers is here. I mean, dude, they've been just. I agree. There's probably some level of panic that has kind of snowballed for them, because, like, a lot of their moves have not made a lot of sense, like, long term.
But that's where I'm getting. If you don't fire Coach Bud, do you definitely trade away Drew Holiday and say we need to bring in Dame Lillard and overpay to get him and make sure he doesn't go to Miami? Like,
they should have held the course with that team for sure.
Right. And I think that again, like it's just that they overreacted ultimately to a Giannis injury because Jimmy went nuclear, like you said, and because he was shit talking on him so much the whole time. It's like it had that personal effect where it's like, the Bucks management was like, oh no, we got to do something. And then they fired the coach. And like, I don't remember, there was some bullshit with Coach Bud about they had an issue with him in the case. But I thought, it's just a huge overreaction because you got to give credit to the Giannis injury, right? Like, wash the year. If Giannis gets hurt and his back is spasming on the court in game 2 or game 3 of the first round, that year is shot. You just let go of that year. Your number one franchise player who's your only chance of winning a championship ever just got hurt in a really bad way. Wash the whole year, come back, give it another shot because you were a 1 seed or whatever the case may be. Right.
Well,
Instead, they
I
fire
hate
the
to
coach.
say it, man. Like Giannis is that at that point in his career and still is where like, I don't know, man, this coach is kind of a scapegoat. Like they lost both those Miami series where like, yeah, you can talk about the injury, but like the fact that it even got to that point, it's like Giannis didn't play that great. Giannis got to play better. That's on him. You know what I mean? Like, why are you even in these series in round 1 with these teams? Like, yeah, like, I mean, honestly, dude, if you look at the whole like Heat culture thing recently and like, oh, we just need to get into the playoffs, it's really just been at the expense of the Bucks. Like,
right. Yeah.
what else have they really done? Like, I don't know.
Well, they made the one run to the finals there late, and
Right,
they made the run to the
they beat the
finals.
Bucks to do
Right.
that.
No, yeah. And the Bucks is what definitely like boosted the momentum.
None of it was possible without the Milwaukee
without
Bucks.
the Bucks. Yeah. Yeah. No, the Bucks are the
So-
scapegoats for that Heat culture. No, you're right. That's a great point. And well, honestly, I also just think it's really funny because if you look at all these moves that they made and all these overreactions the Bucks made and the mistakes they made, it was all these panic desperate moves that were like, oh no, we can't lose Giannis. We need to do this to make sure we don't lose Giannis. Oh no, what if we lose Giannis? Let's do everything we can to keep Giannis. No matter what, we just anything we can do to not lose Giannis. What's going to happen in the end? They're going to fucking lose Giannis.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's hilarious and ridiculous that it's playing out like that.
No, it's true. I mean, well, you never know what kind of things are happening behind closed doors there, right? Like you don't know how much
right.
Giannis was pushing for those things, right? Where it's like, hey, if he's pushing for this, like I can see why an organization is going to cave on some of that stuff, right? Like,
yeah, but that doesn't mean he's going to,
especially one as like Milwaukee, right? Like we're not talking about.
I mean, no, yeah,
you're not talking about like Pat Riley running the fucking team and this and that,
right.
where it's like, nah, bro,
Giannis
player,
has all the leverage any player could ever have.
Yeah,
in Milwaukee for sure.
Yeah, it would be interesting. It'll be interesting to hear about that if it ever does come out, kind of years down the road, like what happened with that Milwaukee team when Giannis was in that point.
Well, also, like, it would be great to hear that story, and then like it'd be the one thing that really paints Giannis bad. Like, what if he openly asked for a trade if they're horrible this year and like they look like they're going to be horrible next year, and he openly asked for a trade next year or this year or whatever. If he has to be traded, and we find out that he was like pulling those kind of GM like strings, it's just such a tough look for him because you're not taking accountability for the mistakes that you made at that point if you're Giannis. But on the other hand, it's like you're one of the best players in the league. You're at that age where you only got a couple years left being that guy. Do you really want to waste it on this squad?
Dude, I mean, this is kind of this is kind of a fascinating topic, right? Like you're talking about, whatever you think of him present day, he's a top 5 absolute worst player in the league, right? Like I think some people would have him as high as 1, some people have him as low as 5, maybe. He's probably somewhere in the middle.
Well, I don't think anyone has him below 4, bro. I mean, I don't even see how you have him below 3, really. But yeah, okay, he's definitely top 5.
That's what I'm saying. Like worst case, right?
Unquestionable. Unquestionable.
Yeah. So like, yeah, is he the next player kind of that caliber that's going to be like changing venues, and how's it going to happen, right? And like, what are the pieces going to be that, like, because right now, I mean, I'm looking at his contract, right? He's got a player option in 27, 28. So, it's probably going to be a forced trade if things go south, right? Because like if I'm him, you're like, shit, dude, I'm not playing out 3 more seasons of this, right? Like, and like you said, it would be a bad look, but like, hey, what else? I got to get out of here and get into a better spot.
Oh, and they're not trading him for nothing short of a king's reward to get him. Like they're gonna ask for everything for him because of how long the contract is, like you said.
As they should.
As they should, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, like, if you look at the teams that have the assets to actually make that trade, there aren't really too many. And again, I think we'd have to look deeper into the salary cap situation.
For sure.
But boy, oh boy, what if that team could be OKC, who has more draft capital than anyone, has Isaiah Hartenstein making $30 million they just paid, who, by the way, even though I really love iHeart, making 30 is a hell of a trade asset to have in those kind of trades.
Yeah.
That might, like, short of Chet Hartenstein or Chet Hartenstein, short of Chet and or Jalen Williams, like I think it's just the three guys they won't get rid of. I don't see them. There's no way they don't get rid of SGA. They won't get rid of Chet, and I don't think they get rid of Jalen Williams. But short of those three guys, with
you can't keep Hartenstein with like
right.
Hartenstein, Giannis, like there's no spacing there if those are your.
But if you make the pieces like Hartenstein and one or two of the young bench players that are actually showing a lot of promise that are pretty good players, and you add like 7 first-round picks, it's Giannis. It would have to be like 7 or 8, and they have the 7 or 8 to throw away like it's nothing. Doesn't even hurt them. We don't even need these 7 or 8 first because we have 17 in the next 5 years or whatever they have. Some really ludicrous number like that. But Jesus Christ.
Yeah, they have Sam Presti just fucking hoarding that shit. Like he's like those fucking people that go and buy all the toilet paper, during those fucking natural disasters.
I fucking as someone who has lived in Florida for so long, and I've lived through so many of these hurricanes. First of all, like obviously the water goes first, and you want to get the extra gas and like all that. But the toilet paper thing is such a funny thing because like I don't ever see a scenario where you need that much toilet paper. Like when are you going to not be able to get toilet paper for months? Like you go through that much toilet paper.
You're not going to need it.
The logic just has never been there for me with the toilet paper thing. It's funny.
It's just one item I guess you don't want to run out of, like first round picks, I guess,
Sam Presti. But honestly, if that team could get Giannis though, wow, what an easy championship we would see. Like if you're basically trading Hartenstein and maybe another piece, but you're keeping your main pieces and you're just bringing in Giannis. Oh my God. And not only that, he would fit the team. He would fit the team. And imagine Giannis on a team that's already that good at defense. Jesus, with Chet's blocking and and the way he'd be running fast breaks with SGA. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, imagine
that would be some
Chet Giannis. The rim protection.
Oh my God. Well, imagine guys having to go up against Chet and Giannis coming in with those behind the player swipes. How many blocks he'd have from just those?
That'd be fun to watch.
With those, it'd be incredible. But obviously kind of like impossible situation.
So the other team, and I hate that I'm even saying this, but the only other team that really came to mind, and the timing may not work unless the Bucks really collapse quickly, would be Golden State. Steph and Giannis would be pretty fun to watch. And I think
incredible.
You could, I'd have to look at what Golden State's cap and pick situation is, but they got a lot of young players, tradable pieces. They could probably put it together if they had some of the picks to round it out. Because like you said, unless you're a team that's got, it's going to come with a ton of picks to get Giannis, because like the players themselves are not going to equate to what the Bucks are going to want in return, right?
Wow, I'm looking at it. Again, I don't know how the situation is and who's in which part of the again, I think again this all comes down to the issue of the second apron is what would prevent the trade from happening. Because I don't think there are any teams that have enough salary cap and have a player that makes enough to make the one-for-one trade thing work. Like if you're the Warriors, you have to trade Andrew Wiggins. He only makes $26 million. I don't think that they could just take on the extra $27 million that Giannis makes on top of that. And you can't aggregate players to get to Giannis because of the second apron. Bucks aren't allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So it definitely makes
No,
you
you're right.
not sure how that would work. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
either way,
It might not. I think it might be a bit of a stretch, like with everything you just went through. But in terms of like on court, that'd be an interesting one, right? Where like Steph, Giannis together would be, at least for a couple more years, it'd be pretty cool to watch. I think you're muted.
yeah, for sure. What you got anything else you want to hit tonight?
Man, I guess real quick, Tyrese Halliburton, he's a fucking bum. Tyrese, if you happen to ever watch this episode by some fucking random chance, you're a fucking bum. Everything
all
I
you
was
got
saying
for
about
us?
him was, I mean, how much do you want me to? I can go down and fucking rattle some hate on the guy, but it's nothing we haven't talked about before. I mean, he's shooting like 38% from the field, afraid to score, literally got held to 0 points in one game. It's like everything that we were seeing last year, where like he had those burst games that came out of nowhere. That's the outlier. And
Yeah.
dude, unless he gets his head out of his ass and proves me wrong, those Pacers are going to be in the play-in. I think at best, even in a weak East, I think they look lost right now.
Yeah,
I mean, they
they
gave him
do.
that max contract. You paid Siakam, rightfully so. I mean, that's like kind of your go-to scorer. You know. Anyway, I'm enjoying this Halliburton. I'm enjoying this Pacers. Hope it continues. That's really all I'll say on that.
They definitely don't look good, and he is having a bad year so far for sure. It's a rough time for him, and it's like you said, it's a bad look to go from he was talked about as one of the best players in the NBA to start last season, legitimately playing like one of the best runs in the NBA at the beginning of the season, talked about like in that first team All NBA caliber kind of a player, to then you limp to the 65 game mark and your team allows you to limp through it, playing very limited minutes in some games just to get there. And the reason you're getting to the 65 game mark is to potentially make that All NBA team, which he did, which just gets you that max contract. And then when you get it, you look this bad. That's just a bad look for anyone.
Yep.
For sure.
Well, and retroactively too, you know, you look at that Olympic roster and you're like, that was a fucking head scratcher to me. It was like
that he was on the team.
Well, yeah. And then, but then like after you pick him, some of those lineups that Kerr was trotting out there, I'm like, bro, there's not a fucking point guard on the floor. Like there's nobody to facilitate. Like, why do you even have this guy on the roster if you're not going to use him?
You're not going to play him.
Yeah. It made no sense to me.
I'll bet that he played pretty good against the Knicks in the playoffs. Honestly, he didn't play bad against the Knicks. He had a lot of really nice.
He was just streaky, right? He had a couple really good games, good halves, right? It was never like consistent. And that's my whole thing with him. He's not assertive. He's not consistent. Right. He defers. Right. He's just he's mentally weak.
The deferring part is, I don't know what the word is. It's got to be embarrassing. Right, because when you're seen as this big-time NBA player and you defer like that the way he does, it's like glaring, really obvious, and just not good.
Well, so I don't know if you are on Twitter at all for the NBA, but I've had some pretty good discourse over the last 12 months with some Pacer fans on there, and you're starting to see the tide turn amongst the Pacer fans on their opinion of him. I think they're starting to
hate.
So, well, and I think it's
funny.
It's, you know. I'm hating right now. It's not impossible for him to change this, but like I in my opinion, I think we're seeing more so a regression to like the player that he generally is. He's probably a little better than what we're seeing here, but I don't think he's anywhere near what we saw during that little stretch last year, early in the regular season.
I mean, he's got it in him though. He's definitely got that in him, and that's why that's why they put him on that the Team USA thing. I think that they put him on the Team USA thing because Joe Dumars and the people in charge of Team USA personnel agrees that he's got it in him, and they think, let's give this guy 4 years to develop, and 4 years from now he might be good enough to be a part of that Team USA they need. Now, I kind of agree with you that that's not necessarily likely, and I don't think that he can maintain that even though he may or may not have it in him. But like
I think
his
it's a
ceiling
mentality thing for him, man.
his
That's the
ceiling is
thing. It's like
very high, is my point. He has a really, really high ceiling on what he's capable of. And like I don't
I just
like
don't think the
him,
ceiling's as
but part
high
of
as
that is just
everyone
because I'm a
does.
Pacers hater. And he's easy to not like. Just his vibe is just not
No,
great
it's not a
sometimes. You know what I mean?
well, so I feel like there was a little bit of man, so like last year I was on this fucking hate train of him before anything ever happened with the Knicks, anything, right? So it just became fucking poetic that that's how the Knicks season ended up ending last year, was to the Pacers, all those fucking injuries. Then he gets picked for
For
the
sure.
fucking Olympic team over
Yeah.
Brunson, even before Brunson was injured, right? They made that pick before Brunson hurt his wrist or his hand. So it was like,
Yeah.
so it was, you know, I just want to say that I fucking hated this guy's vibe. I hated how overrated he was leading up to that in-season tournament last year.
Yep.
I think he's a clown.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. On behalf of Canny here, I'm Zev, and I can definitely confidently say that we both love this game, and I hope everybody enjoyed listening. Good night.